This year on May 4th will mark the 53rd anniversary of the Kent State Massacre, where 9 students were injured and 4 students tragically lost their lives. Ohio National Guard opened fire into a crowd protesting the Vietnam War moving into Cambodia. In the Ends of Power, Haldeman states that shootings of Kent State began the slide into Watergate, eventually destroying the Nixon administration. Beyond the direct effects of May 4th, the shootings have certainly come to symbolize the deep political and local divisions that so sharply divided the country during the Vietnam War. The student-led strikes led to temporary close of colleges for quite some time. Republican Richard Nixon was president at this time, as he was elected in the 1968 election partially as a result of his promise to end the Vietnam War with his secret plan. The Nixon administration had undertaken a strategy called Vietnamitization. The gradual shift of responsibility for fighting the war from U.S. forces to those of Republic of South Vietnam, with the containment withdrawal of the U.S. troops. This all started Thursday, April 30th, when Nixon announced the invasion of Cambodia. There were 2 rallies held in the Kent State Commons. This first photo is the first rally. It was held on Friday, May 1st. It was held at the base of Blanket Hill near the Victory Bell, where then attended 500 students who buried a copy of the U.S. Constitution because they believe, in a sense, Nixon had murdered the Constitution. There is a quote that says, "Warm weather, drinking, and indignation over the invasion of Cambodia result in a crowd moving towards the center of Kent State, breaking some windows." So it went from a peaceful protest to a not-so-peaceful protest. After they were dispersed into the intersection of Main and Water Streets, the mayor hears rumors of radical revolts and declares a state of emergency. Everyone was removed from bars by a National Guard officer, forced back to campus by tear gas from the Kent State Police. Tear gas stimulates the lacrimal gland in the eye to cause you to produce tears, and in addition to that, it can cause severe eye and respiratory pain, skin irritation, bleeding, and blindness. So not only did they retaliate with force, it kind of caused this to be taken up a little bit in sense of riots. Here is a photo of the first riot downtown, and you can see they are holding a sign in the front that says, "Bring all the troops home now, student mobilization cause." So moving forward to Saturday, May 2nd, downtown cleanup is mandatory for students, and the fear of radical revolution is resulted in threats of downtown stores, shutting down bars, shutting down the main street to the Kent State campus. Shortly after 8 p.m., over 1,000 students surrounded the Army Reserve training camp and set it on fire. Firefighters could not put out the fire because of holes that were punctured in their hoses, causing them to leave the scene. Here is a photo of them trying to put out the fire, but sadly, the Army Reserve training camp was burnt to the ground, and by midnight, National Guard officers cleared the campus. Sunday, May 3rd, 850 armed guards were on campus and people stopped to take photos, complicating things when a misunderstanding broke out amongst local university, local, and state officials. Near dusk, a crowd gathers at the Victory Bell in the Commons, and at 9 p.m. the Ohio Riot Act is read and tear gas is again fired into the crowd. They reassemble at the intersection of East Main and Lincoln, blocking traffic. This is a photo of the tear gas being fired into the crowd after the Ohio Riot Act is read near the Victory Bell. After this is when they reassembled at the intersection of East Main and Lincoln, and the Riot Act was read again, and they dispersed the tear gas once again. Now guardsmen and demonstrators, not only just the rioters, are all injured in the confusion that this causes. And although this causes confusion and this confrontation causes resentment among all parties, classes were to resume as normal on Monday, but they were determined to hold a rally at noon, even though the National Guard tries to resolve to disperse the issue. May 4th is when tragedy struck. More than 2,000 people, not just students, gathered in the vicinity of the Commons. Most know that the rally has been banned, but commuters had no idea, so they came from out of town anyway. The Ohio National Guards barked orders to dispense the rally, and they were met with protesters chanting, cursing, and throwing rocks at them. At noon, once again, the tear gas was fired, but since it was windy, it had little to no effect, and the protesters stood their ground. The guardsmen were carrying fixed bayonets, forcing the protesters to retreat further and further into campus, which you can see in this photo, as they are lined up and they are retreating backwards. They kept forcing them until they were as furthest back as they could go onto the practice field with a fence on three sides. The crowd throws rocks and gives guardsmen that verbal abuse, and the guardsmen then retrace their steps and reload their weapons, with the protesters following as close to 20 yards and as far as 60 to 75 yards behind. When they neared the crest of Blanket Hill, tragedy struck. The guards turned, and 28 of them fired 61 to 67 shots in a matter of 13 seconds towards the parking lot, where then 4 people lay dying and 9 people lay injured. The closest casualty is 20 yards away, and the furthest is 250 yards away. All 13 are Kent State students. This poignant picture of Mary Vecchiccio kneeling in agony over Jeffrey Miller's body, for example, will remain as a reminder of the day when the Vietnam War came home to America. The 4 students killed were Jeffrey Miller, Allison Krauss, William Schroeder, and Sandra Schuer. The 9 wounded students were Joseph Lewis, John Cleary, Thomas Grace, Alan Canfora, Dean Collar, Douglas Wentmore, James Russell, Robert Stamps, and Donald McKenzie. Dean Collar will be permanently paralyzed from his injury caused by the Ohio National Guard. This is a photo of them protesting downtown in Washington because of the Kent State Massacre. And here is another walk that is honoring the 4 students that passed away in another college town. I believe this was OU. And then this final photo is Allison Krauss's father standing on the spot where she was murdered. Those are all haunting images and will go down in history. The Kent State Massacre was a tragic event, but it showed that even a war overseas still affects the people and everyone's lives at home.